early childhood development. Each week we talk about a different stage of children development and what children need. And now, here comes your host.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Taryn, and you are listening to The Parent Thing. I have CJ Smith in the Zoom in the studio with me today. And I came across her TikTok page a couple of weeks ago. I was just scrolling and she popped up on my For You page, and she had her daughter on her lap, and you were tapping your daughter's lap and talking to her, and it was this calm down method. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting. So I go and I follow her page. And the next day, the little boy that I am looking after at the moment, he is wild. And I was like, you know what? I was going to pop him on my lap. I'm going to start tapping his lap and I'm going to start talking to him. So he starts freaking out at first, like, why are you holding me? Why are you hitting me? And he's freaking out. And calmly, I say to him, I'm not hitting you. We're just having a conversation and I'm just breathing with you so that you can calm down a little bit. And it took not even 5 seconds. And this boy was a new boy. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm contacting her. And I really, really hope that she agrees to come on the podcast. So CJ, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what it is, what that magic trick was?
Yeah, so I am a nervous system practitioner. The type of certification I have is called Neuro-Somatic Intelligence. And it's the study of the link between our brain and our nervous system. And it is teaching the minimum effective dose of how we can create positive stimulation at the level of the nervous system to change the outputs from the nervous system. So when any human is in distress, their nervous system is in distress. And so the nervous system is creating these outputs, which sometimes can be called negative outputs. Like if someone is in distress and they're screaming, or some kids can get so upset that they'll vomit. These are protective outputs of what the nervous system is trying to do to keep us safe. If a child cries, their nervous system knows that a grown-up or a caretaker is going to come and try and help them, right? So this is why kids, they fall and they get hurt and they cry so that they can get the help that they need. But, sometimes kids get into these tantrums and they've got these big feelings and they really don't know how to regulate themselves, and they really do need a grown-up to come in and help. And you know what? Sometimes grown-ups feel that way too.
Absolutely.
So I started studying this, and it was typically used for high-performance athletes and people that had been dealing with acute chronic pain. And so all of the techniques I used was studied were designed for a grown-up, an adult, to be able to do. And there's all these literally hundreds of different, we call them neurosomatic drills, that can be done that create new inputs and then create new outputs. And I started trying them on myself at first and had this incredible shift in my anxiety went down. And I've always been for 40 years, I was chewing on my nails, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, or I'd be picking at them, and it would be too late. By the time I consciously became aware that I was doing it, it was done. And I always had hangnails and everything. And I looked down a few weeks into this course and was like, oh, wow, I have whites on my nails now all of a sudden. Huh. And so I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I haven't had a manicure or anything since. And it's just been 8 months now of never having that kind of problem again. And my kids also came up to me one day, and my oldest daughter was like, Mommy, you never shout anymore. You're not yelling. And I was like, I'm pretty sure sometimes I do raise my voice at you guys. But her lived experience was that I wasn't getting so escalated anymore when I was frustrated, that most of the time I was able to navigate these situations with more grace. And so I started trying to figure out play-based ways that I could present these ideas to my kids that would make it fun and feel like a game and be able to help, because obviously it's dysregulating for my nervous system as well when my child is totally dysregulated. And I feel like I want to help them. And sometimes you're saying all the right things and you're maybe even doing all the right things and the child is still upset. And that can be a really powerless feeling when you're like, gosh, I've done all the things I know in my parenting toolkit right now. And
Yeah.
this child is still upset. I feel very out of control. Like I had a very colicky type baby. Like my oldest was a very colicky kind of a baby. And I wish I had had these tools then to be able to, you know, help her at the level of her nervous system. Cause I was like, man, I fed her, I've changed her, I've burped her, like we've gone for a walk. I don't know what else to do. You know, now I understand that like her nervous system was dysregulated. And if I could have done some of these, you know, proprioceptive drills or helped her in these ways, it probably would have been a much different experience for both of us.
That's amazing. So I am a teacher, right? I teach little people. And when I became a teacher was when I found out that there is an occupation called an occupational therapist. And just the way I grew up, it was always like, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher. There was always these like basic occupations that you could do. And I never knew that there was so many things that people could do with their lives that could be an occupation. And so I've always been obsessed with occupational therapy. And I feel like if I had known that that was an occupation I could do, I probably would have gone along that route. But this has become something that I'm just like, why did I not know about this? Like how, like, so tell me how did you get into this? Like, how did you find out about neurosomatic intelligence? And how it's just mind blowing to me.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was actually in the Bahamas last year. I went on a leadership retreat. And so there was these incredible women from all over North America. Many of them were extremely successful, like multi-million-dollar businesses. And I was like, I'm going to go be in that energy. And, you know, I've had a very successful business as well, but I was like, you know, you can always learn from people like this. There's always like, when you get a concentrated group of like high performers together, I just know something good is going to come out of this, but I have no idea what. Right. So I went down and I started meeting all these people. And even before I got there, there was this one woman who I was like, there's something about your energy. I really think we're going to hit it off. And sure enough, there was all kinds of different levels in which we really connected when we were down there. And one of the things I was noticing about her was she was doing these neuro drills while we were doing some of the like mindset and personal development type work on this retreat. I would notice her like pause and start doing all these different like tapping, and like I'd seen tapping before. So I was like, oh yeah, she's doing some tapping. Oh, that's interesting. Or like different like visual drills. And I was like, I haven't seen that before, but that's interesting. And eventually I asked her about it. And I said, yeah, I'm noticing you're doing, you know, some stuff to help your body, like some somatic something or other, you know, what are you doing there? And she's like, yeah, it's called Neuro-Somatic Intelligence. And it's absolutely a game changer. She's like, I credit this as like my secret weapon to why I've been so successful. She's like, she said she grew up being, you know, in a pretty dysregulating, like, you know, body. She had some medication and stuff like that she was needing to have to just even function at a basic level, she said. And now as an adult, she's got all these tools and she's able to be in her body, and these things that used to really hold her back as a child are like no longer issues for her anymore. And she specifically said, these tools work so well that I think that anyone who's not willing to try them is crazy. And I was like, well, that's a bold statement. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, you got the proof's in the pudding. You've obviously like done really well for yourself. So this feels like it's worth trying, you know? And I said, could I have the contact of the person who you learned this from? And she said, yeah, you bet. So she sent me this person's contact on Instagram. And then I went home and I just got kind of busy with my kids and stuff like that. And before I knew it, like months had passed and I had forgotten to follow up with this contact. And then all of a sudden, the same friend that I met in the Bahamas shared this slide saying, the the secret weapon that I've been using, this Neuro-Somatic Intelligence, they're doing a coaching opportunity so you can become a certified coach of this. Now, keep in mind, I had never even tried it yet, right?
Yeah.
But everything in my being, my intuitive pull towards doing this was like a million
Now,
like, yes,
yeah.
like full body, yes. And I'm like, okay, like I've learned to listen to my intuition. So I guess we're doing this. I have no idea what it is or what to expect, but I got on the call with the girl who she had originally connected with me. And I was like, so I'm a yes, I'll send you the, payment for the certification course, but like, can you tell me like
What am I doing?
it is? And I had a headache for like days going into this, just like not like a terrible one. I'm quite prone to like migraines that are like blinding, terrible ones as well. But I'd had this headache for like 2 or 3 days that was just kind of dull, just kind of there, just annoying level headache. I'd taken ibuprofen, I tried resting, I tried drinking, like guzzling water, like nothing was helping this headache go away. So we had this quick session on Zoom. She told me about it and she said, oh, I'm going to send you some videos to try and, just try them at your own pace and just see how it goes. Let me know. So she sent me these videos and I spent the rest of the afternoon kind of like watching these videos and trying these different neurosomatic drills on myself. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, like my headache is gone, right? I'm like, I feel way better. So I was sold. I was like, okay, there's something to this. And sure enough, like my headaches, I rarely have headaches anymore. My immune system has gotten so much better. Myself and my kids have not been getting sick as often as we used to. I mean, kids still get sick. That's part of how they develop their immune system, but they're not lasting as long. Like my youngest had like persistent cough where it was going on for months and months and months. And now she's just, more shortening up those windows and able to recover sooner. I'm not getting sick as often from them. I used to get these migraines, like I said, like every month or two, I'd pretty much get like a pretty horrible migraine. And I would be literally out of commission for like 8 hours. Sometimes it'd be all night long, sick to my stomach, like just awful. And now I'm not getting those migraines anymore. And actually the only time I've had one since I became certified was when that video that you saw originally first went viral, because that was dysregulating for my nervous system. Like, I don't know if you know, I had 42 followers on TikTok in January.
Okay.
I was not an active user of TikTok. I just started putting up a couple videos to see what would happen. And that moment with Micah, I was actually having a rough day. I had woken up, had a bit of a dull headache, one of those just sort of annoying ones. I had done some neuro drills. I actually posted a video of myself that morning doing some neuro drills and they helped. But my nervous system quickly got dysregulated through the rest of the day because we just had a really busy, like she had a photo shoot and then we had a birthday party that was like disco bowling and just, I was going to have a nap, but I ended up having a client come over. So I was just exhausted. And by the time she was ready for bed, I had like no energy left to deal with this meltdown. And I thought to myself, okay, you know what? Like, I'm going to turn on my camera and I'm just going to record myself doing this. I feel like I'm going to just hold myself accountable that way, because definitely there is part of me right now that just wants to be like, go to bed.
Yeah.
So I just turned on my camera and just, put it on the ground and just, I always keep my camera facing my kids so that they know that they're being recorded and that they have the option of being like, I don't want to be recorded, turn it off, which they do sometimes. And then I turn it off. Yeah, I think that's really the only way we can. They're too young to have like informed consent, but I think consent still matters. And so
Absolutely.
I do try to like weigh the pros and cons. I know this is a whole other topic that we could talk about, but in any case, I made the video. It worked. Obviously it worked really well for her. She went to sleep, no dramas after that. It was all good. I was like, that was a pretty good video. So I quickly edited. I stayed up till like 11 o'clock at night, just like quickly put that thing together, put it on TikTok, and woke up in the morning and it had like 250,000 views. And I was like,
that's crazy.
Oh, okay. And then, of course, it just kept going and going. Every single time I'd open up the app, there's like hundreds of comments and, some really, critical comments and
Of
also
course, because people don't know how to just mind their own business. But that's also another topic.
you know, so I was like, oh, like this, I had never really been seen in this way. And so my subconscious had a reaction, my nervous system had a reaction, and I actually ended up getting a migraine when that video hit 1 million views, like 2 or 3 days after it was posted. I ended up with that. I was like, I know exactly what is causing this migraine. And I did all the neurosomatic things I could think of, but nothing would, you know, it was a deeply rooted fear, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like I can, when people write negative comments on my videos about like, I can't believe that you're putting your kids on the internet like this. I'm like, I get it. Like I have that fear too. And I'm also thinking about the millions or maybe even billions of other children whose parents don't have these tools, whose lives, right? Like I get it. And it's not all about my child either. Like, what if this is a game changer for another parent that then they can see it being modeled and they can maybe break the cycle of abuse for their child? Like, what if I hoard all of this information and keep it to myself? Sure, I make lots of videos with just me, but there's a difference between just seeing a parent, oh, this is what you want to do in the situation, and like an educational video like that, and like a real raw moment,
right?
you know.
Absolutely. I am so fascinated, and I think I want in as well. Just seeing like how just that one time that I tried it on this little boy and how quickly like everything changed. I don't even know what I was doing. I just know that your daughter was on your lap and you were tapping her lap. So that's what I did. Like, I don't know the science behind it. I don't know whatever, but it was just like, wow. It actually also came off of a friend of mine sent me a video of a dad. The little girl is having a big emotion, and the dad goes, wait, it's my turn. And the dad has like imitates this big emotion. So the little girl obviously would like stop, deer in headlights, is watching her dad do that. And then he goes, okay, you can go on now, it's your turn. And then she doesn't anymore. And so my friend goes, this is the life hack of the century. And I said, it's funny and it's entertaining to people looking at it, but this is actually not it. I said, this father's mocking his child. He's stopping her from getting her feelings out. Like, I was like, tears literally release cortisol out of the body. Like, it needs to come out, and he's just stopped it. He's made fun of her, telling her it's not okay to feel that way. And then my friend was like, oh, wait, what? And so we went into this whole deep conversation, and it was right after I had done the lap trick with the little boy that I look after. And my friend was just fascinated. He was like, I did not see it that way. I thought you need to stop a child from crying because that's what parents do. And so that's why I'm doing this, like exactly what you're saying, this awareness and this education, just letting parents know that what was done to us as children is not necessarily the way to go. And so this is why this fascinates me so much, that instead of trying to stop your child from having the feelings, or it's rather like helping them regulate through and work through these emotions, right? But then there's another part to this that I actually didn't realize was the health benefits, never mind just the regulation benefits, but the health. I'm just like, I'm telling you, like, mind blown. You know that little mind blown emoji? That's me right now.
Yeah, it's incredible how beneficial it can be. Like, it's just for everyone, like for children. I mean, my sort of niche is like teaching this to kids, but I do all kinds of stuff for parents too, because I'm like, we need, if you're a human and you're living in a body that has a nervous system, this can help you, which, by the way, is all of the people.
Every
like
human breathing, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting with that video because there's this whole sub conversation that's going on in the comment section around like, well, you took away her story time. You punished her. Why would you punish her? And I was like, well, nervous system regulation is not a punishment. I identified, like, she had said, I hate you to her sister. And she had been saying this over and over and over again. And we had multiple conversations about it throughout the day, about why, it's not okay to use that language in that way. and helping her process the feelings that were coming up that were sort of leading her to sort of express herself that way. And the conversations just weren't landing for her. And so I found it really interesting in that moment when I was like, all right, listen, clearly you're dysregulated. Instead of having a story, we're going to help you with these big feelings. So, you know, I sent her sister to bed and I went downstairs. I actually left her in her room for a moment. I said, I need a minute right now to just kind of get myself together, because that's key. Like for any
That's so
parents,
important.
right? That for any parents listening, like I know it can be hard when your child's upset to walk away, but it's okay to say, I will be right back. I love you. I need to go take care of myself for 1 minute, and then I will come right back and I'm going to help you. Because
Right,
if
because
we,
how can you regulate somebody when you are not regulated yourself?
exactly, I was self-aware enough to know, to be, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I feel some like anger inside of my body because we've already dealt with this so many times today and she doesn't seem to be hearing. And that's like loss of control, like, you know, fear for my older daughter, because my older daughter has been internalizing this and having some issues with her self-image as a result. So it was like a triggering situation for me, even though it wasn't directed at me. I was like, gosh, I don't know how to parent in this moment. And I've tried everything I can try to stop this kind of language in our home, and it's still happening, right? So I knew I was not in a place to be able to resolve the problem from that frequency. So I put her in her bed, which of course she got more upset, but I'm like, she's safe. She's in her bed. She's not going to hurt herself. She's going to be okay for a minute. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to put my AirPods in to kind of block some of this noise, but I'll still be able to hear her. And I will do some quick drills on myself. So I did some neurosomatic drills on myself first, took some deep breaths, shook off some of that energy that had been like spinning around inside of my body, and was like, okay, let's do this. And so the bilateral tapping that you've mentioned a couple of times, this is a technique that is based on a scientist who was, or a doctor or a scientist, I can't remember, but she was in a field and she was noticing that the tall grains in the fields were swaying with the wind, and she was watching the grains sway in the wind. And so her eyes were moving from side to side, and she noticed that she started feeling calm. And so they started studying it, and then they discovered that like when we're sleeping, that's what our eyes do. Our eyes go back and forth rapidly. That's why it's
The
called
REM, yeah.
REM sleep, rapid eye movement. And what they realized is it's stimulation bilaterally. And so you can activate the same sort of sensation in the body by tapping like left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. So that's what I was doing, like as a way of calming her, because I knew she had said that because she was exhausted. We had a big day. It was a later than normal bedtime. We had decided to have a little movie night together. And so they were up a little bit later, and it doesn't take much for a kid to just finally reach that breaking point where like the train has left the station. Now is going to be a battle for bed because they are just so overtired, right? And I knew we were in that space. So I was like, let's just get her body on a subconscious level stimulated the way it is when she's sleeping. So I started doing that bilateral tapping with her. And then I also know breath work is like another really good way. But if I don't know if you've ever tried this with a kid when they're upset, telling them to take a deep breath. Some kids might. Many kids are like, no.
Yeah.
You know? And to be honest,
Absolutely.
I don't really like it if I'm upset and someone's like, why don't you take a deep breath?
Let's
I'm
take
like,
a deep breath. That's
yeah.
almost like condescending, right?
Yeah, right. So I was like, hey, why don't we blow out the birthday candles? Do you want to blow out the birthday candles together? So I put up my fingers and I said, we're going to practice because you're going to turn 4. So she was able to like, and do like forceful exhales to blow out the birthday candles. And then another technique. Another technique I used in that particular video was to better, so when kids get so overwhelmed and dysregulated like that, they often can almost have like an energetic experience where they are just not grounded in their body anymore. They are not connected to their body. And so I started doing like this is why some kids, you know, when they get upset, they'll start like banging their head against the wall, or they'll like start even like self-harming because they're just trying to feel something and they are so disconnected in that moment and full of adrenaline and cortisol dumping and all these things that it actually scientifically they are not connected in their bodies.
Yeah.
And so we did head and shoulders, knees and toes, because that is like, I'm reminding her brain, I'm touching at the same time as saying like, this is your head, this is your shoulders, these are your knees, these are your toes, and just using a song she already knows from daycare and making it fun, making it like play. And it makes a huge difference, not only for just mixing up the tone and not being condescending and engaging her and all this, but also like, it's literally rewiring the connection between the brain and the body. You know, even we do this one quite often in our house too, where we rub our hands together, you know, when you're cold and you rub your hands together like this, because again, you're stimulating all of the nerves in your hands, and you can think to yourself like, these are my hands, these are my hands. But then you're also visually seeing your hands at the same time. You're creating energy because you're creating friction. So you're actually changing the frequency of the on like a molecular level, and then you can bring all of that energy into your heart and take a deep breath. And if you try it, you'll find it's like a radiating kind of like melting sort of feeling that starts coming out from your heart center. It's such a quick and easy way to just reset your energy. And it's also reestablishing so that every single time you're using your hands, you can do this on your feet too. These are my feet. These are my feet. These are my toes. This is my ankle. This is the ball of my foot. This is the heel of my foot. You know, and just spend a couple seconds doing that, usually with a cloth, because if you're using your bare hand on your foot, that's actually a little bit confusing for your brain, because it's getting sensory stimulus on both your hand and your foot.
Okay.
So use like a cloth or something like that to do that. But then every single step you take for the entire day, the nervous system is doing from a place of more safety, because the connection and the wiring between our brain and our foot is stronger, and our brain has a better idea of where in time and space our foot is with every single step. So they're like,
fascinating.
It's small things. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed as a parent, I don't have time to take on anything else. What do you mean get up a half an hour early and spend time for myself? No, literally these things can be done in 30 seconds, 1 minute. You know, you can do the foot stimulation with the sheets of your beds, rubbing your feet around on the sheets of your bed. These are my feet. These are my feet, before you get up in the morning, and knowing that for the entire day now, your nervous system is operating from a place of more safety.
I was watching you do that. I'm really gonna try and figure out a way for like to have the visual as well. But I was watching you do that, and as you're doing it, and I'm watching your hands, like I feel myself calming down. And when you took it to your heart, it was like this, like I just felt this calm, and that's just watching you. This is amazing. This is so amazing.
Well, again, this is science-based fact as well, is that the nervous system is always co-regulating to other nervous systems. So the fact that you feel that, it's not just like, oh, am I tripping? Like, how am I feeling that? No.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm like, how am I feeling calm watching you calm yourself down? How?
Yeah, because our nervous systems are literally co-regulating to each other. So your nervous system is regulating to the frequency that I am setting mine at. So this is why, if I'm sure you've noticed, you've walked into a room and somebody's upset, they don't even have to say anything. They don't even have to look at you, and like you can feel it.
Absolutely.
Okay, when someone's had a bad day, right? It's the same thing. So this is how, as educator, you can use this to your advantage. This is how even people who aren't parents can use this to their advantage in the boardroom. By taking a couple minutes and regulating their nervous system, now they're commanding the room, because everybody's nervous system wants to regulate to the frequency that is going to serve them, right? Sometimes you get people that are so dysregulated and everyone's regulating to that, and it's
it's chaos.
Yeah.
And that's what causes the unhealthy and the toxic work environments, right? Is that we tend to gravitate towards the negative, first of all, as humans, it's our nature. But then when somebody is like high strung or, you know, that type of thing, a lot of people gravitate towards, and then that becomes the atmosphere in the place.
Well, and that's, again, like from a place of when you think about evolution, our nervous systems are wired that way, because if you think about like cavemen, if one person is stressed out because they just found out there's a saber-toothed tiger, you know, coming in hot, it makes sense that everyone should regulate to that energy and like,
right, and get out, because that's safety.
yes. And here's the thing about the brain. So I'm sure that other parents can relate too, where it's like, God, I've read all these parenting books. I know I want to be a better parent. And sometimes I just can't. It's like I forget all of those tools in a hot minute. And all of a sudden I'm acting just like my parents were, or I just like the worst version of myself and it just can happen in a split second, you know, and this is because when our nervous system becomes dysregulated, our survival brain is always interpreting everything first. Every single moment of every single day is always going through your survival brain first, because the number one job of our brain is, safety. Am I safe? Right. Am I safe? Right?
I explain it as well in my parenting course, where I say that your brain is taking in, like, you don't see it, but your brain is taking in everything everywhere all at once to keep you safe. So how often do we drive and we kind of zone out on the road, but immediately you alert because the brain has seen that there's a car, and so you get to stop on time, because that's the job of the brain, is safety, to a point of almost sometimes like scaring you from doing a thing because it wants to keep you safe.
Yes. And so our brain is constantly, am I safe? But only sometimes does the brain feel safe enough that it actually allows us to use our prefrontal cortex, where all of our wisdom and knowledge is stored. So when you sometimes feel like, oh, I don't know how, I just couldn't access any of those tools in the heat of the moment. Well, yeah, because you're dysregulated and your brain literally is not allowing that part of your brain where all that information is stored to be accessed right now. And so if you can just take 10 seconds and be able to do a neuro drill, or better yet, preventatively doing these neurosomatic drills, you can actually train the nervous system to not be so reactive. Here's the other concept I think is so important to understand is there's this visual we talk about the threat bucket, because being a human being is a pretty inherently dysregulating experience. Like there's traffic and noise and bills and all the different thoughts and so our threat level, perceived. So this is the thing, real or perceived threat. Sometimes when people think about threat or even the word trauma, they think like some catastrophic event. Like, no, actually, it's as perceived by the nervous system. What is a threat, or what was traumatic? Something could be traumatic for me, and you could be right there beside me when it happened, and it wasn't traumatic for you. It's the lived experience of the person's body that categorizes it that way and stores it that way as a trauma, as a unique individual, because of their own wiring, their own lived experiences, and all these different things, right? So when I talk about threat levels, so like even being a woman is inherently more of a threat in terms of our nervous system than being a man.
Absolutely.
Because we live in a culture that is, patriarchy is a thing, and we see news stories about things happening to women, and there's this vulnerability that comes with being in this kind of a body. Same thing between like being a person of color or being a person with white privilege. Like there's all these different layers of threat that exist inside of our human experience that are contributing to this overall threat level. And the brain is constantly assessing all of those things all at the same time to decide whether or not it's safe, right? Like I am a Caucasian person where I live in Canada. There's a lot of people that look like me, and I don't really think about my skin color at all. And then I've done lots of traveling. I've been to India, Africa, Thailand, Indonesia, like the Philippines, like all over the world. And I've been in situations where people are looking at me and pointing at me and outwardly like calling me on my whiteness, or coming up and confronting me because I look like a porn star that they may have seen on the internet. Right? So it's like, same body, safe in one situation, not safe in another situation, right? So these experiences that we have, if they get to a certain level where the threat bucket is like overflowing, well, our body would actually just shut down. It would be too much. So once it gets to a certain level of threat, it creates outputs to try and keep us safe. So my migraines, that's my nervous system's way of keeping me safe. It's like,
Yeah, it's like you can't go on anymore. You need to lay it down.
Right? You're not going to be making any more viral videos on TikTok if you're laid up with a migraine. That was dysregulating. You got seen in a major way. Some people didn't agree with you. Don't make any more videos. Right? So we have to understand that, like, even when we're not consciously aware of these like perceived threats, the nervous system is taking stock, and sometimes are just existing. Like for me, when I was in Indonesia and I was like, I was way in like Western Java, and I was on my way to this homestay place to stay with a family, and it was not a touristy area. So like a lot of people are not used to seeing someone that looks like me walking around there, especially a woman, especially with like really light colored hair and these giant light blue eyes. Like people were running up to me going, "Ma'am, are you okay? Like, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "I'm just enjoying your beautiful country. Like, I'm just visiting, you know?" Yeah. But after a while, I started being like, am I okay? Like by the time I got to where I was going, my whole body was like shaking and nothing bad had happened to me.
But just that fear that was like projected basically.
Yes. Well, and the people that I met, I said, like, I don't know, was I doing something wrong? Like I was covered. I was doing all the things I thought I needed to do. What happened? And they're like, they're just like, a woman here would never travel on their own like that. And they're not used to seeing someone who stands out so much like you. And so it overwhelmed my system so much that like my whole body was shaking, which was a protective output to try and get me to stop what I was doing, because I was picking up on other people, even though nothing bad happened to me. There wasn't any real trauma happening to me, but my body was reacting to this experience as if there was something wrong.
So does that then speak to the brain not knowing the difference between real and perceived? Like, so you're perceiving and your body reacts as though it's real. Like, yes, there's a real threat, even though there wasn't, but because your mind started going like, I'm in danger. So your body doesn't know your mind doesn't know the difference between real and what you're perceiving just in your mind, right?
Yeah. So think about like a new parent, like a baby crying is not a threat to the parent. It's not going to hurt the parent that the baby is upset. But how dysregulating can it be, especially when you haven't eaten? Like if you haven't eaten and you're hungry, that is dysregulating. That is a threat for your nervous system, because we need to eat to survive. We need to be hydrated to survive. We need to have attachment to survive. We are social animals. And if we have a dysfunctional family or a marriage that is falling apart, this is a huge threat to the nervous system. If we have a child who's unhappy, we start worrying about like, is something seriously wrong with them? Do I need to take them to the doctor? Like I can't seem to help them calm down. Like there's all these different things that can contribute. And even though in reality, there's actually nothing wrong, you know, the baby's just having some big feelings, or the baby's just needs to fart. Like it, you know, like it can be literally so benign. Mm-hmm. But at the level of our nervous system, we can be in full fight or flight as a result of these experiences. So taking a proactive approach to this and doing these drills for just, 2 to 3 minutes a day, you could do them multiple times a day. It starts to reduce the overall threat level in the nervous system so that we have a bigger window of tolerance to be able to cope when stressful moments happen.
So I've been playing around, because I go to, I attend the TikTok university. So I've been playing around with the EFT. Is that part of Neuro-Somatic Intelligence?
Yeah, we do some EFT work in there too. It's awesome. I love doing EFT. I just did it yesterday with my clients.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So speaking of having clients, like when should parents see somebody who practices neurosomatic intelligence, or even for themselves, for their children or for themselves? Like, how do they know that this is like they need to seek out? What would we call you, a neurosomatic? Is it a therapist or
A neurosomatic intelligence practitioner. It's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay. So one of those.
Yeah, that's why I'm like
no.
on
How do
my
parents know that they need to seek out somebody like you for either for their children or for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, everybody needs this. This is why I'm putting it out into the TikTok university too, because I'm like, we're not going to gatekeep nervous system regulation. Like if you're in a
No.
place where you don't feel like you have the financial capacity to be able to invest in something like this, that shouldn't be a barrier for you. Like, here it is for free. Come here. I post new videos all the time. Do the free content, but really, I think everyone can benefit, but especially if your child or yourself are experiencing those protective outputs. So there's like so many protective outputs. I can't cover them all, but people dealing with like being quick to anger, I think, is a really relatable one for parents, where you just have that moment where it's like, like the rage can come up. Like,
Yeah.
I experience this too at times, by the way. I am not immune to normal parenting challenges, right? I practice this because we have a dysregulating environment here sometimes, but if you've got something like that, if you've got maybe your, wine habit has feel like it's taken a hold on you and it's starting to walk that line on addiction, or maybe you are finding yourself to be really reactive to others at work, or maybe you're having chronic pain. You constantly have like a sore neck or a sore back, or you're getting headaches or migraines, or just chronic stress, anxiety. You're tired all the time. These are all signs that your nervous system is not functioning the way that it could. And you don't have to just live with those outputs. A lot of the time we just get really good at coping with these things. And there's actually things that we can do to help make ourselves feel better and help make it be easier to navigate the world from a nervous system that has, received the nourishment that it needs. Like, it's so interesting, because even the medical community is still really learning about the nervous system. There's a TikTok I have that has a flashlight, and I'm explaining how the nervous system is an input-output based system, like a flashlight. You press the button, the light goes on. You press the button, the light goes off. And so let's pretend that, like, when the light goes on, that means the nervous system is triggered and it's doing a protective output. Well, our medical system tends to treat the symptom. So it'll say, okay, well, here's some medication to help with that output. And so in the video, I put like a tea towel over the flashlight and it dims the light. Yeah, it dims the light. The light's not as bright. It's not as blinding as it was before, but we haven't actually done anything to the underlying problem. As soon as we remove the tea towel, we can see the light is still on. So this is kind of how we're dealing with trauma. You don't get to be a human being and not experience trauma. Even the act of being born, however you're born, is a trauma. Like, there's no like real easy way for that to happen. Even for the baby's getting all squished out of its
It's
so
being kicked out of the first home it's ever known. It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? So we all have this suppressed trauma in our bodies, and
the body remembers, the body stores it.
Exactly. And what do we really do from a medical standpoint right now to heal that? Like, not a lot. And so now that's why I'm so excited about this practice, because it's very new. I was actually the first coach in Canada to be certified by this. And it's the culmination of 3 incredible teachers. Like, one is a internationally known, like, applied neurology expert. Another is an expert in physiotherapy. She's a licensed physiotherapist who specialized in the vagus nerve, like way before the vagus nerve had its moment in the sun. Like, I feel like everybody talks about vagus nerve now, but she's been doing it for like 20 or 30 years before anyone was treating the vagus nerve. And she's like decompressing the vagus nerve. And then also another person who created it, she's also studied applied neurology, and she comes from the lens of being a child with a really high ACE score and how that impacted her. She's suffered from addiction, and then overcame addiction, fortunately, like early in her 20s, and has been on this path of healing. And again, even with all the interventions that she's done, she also still talks about like, yes, my body will still react to the childhood trauma. And at times I put myself out there. She has a podcast called Trauma Rewired, which is an excellent resource too for you or anybody listening. But she will do a big podcast episode and her body just goes into like emotional collapse and she's like exhausted and like can't, or she'll get a really bad headache or have like a flare up in her skin, so it's like constantly going through and being able to rewire at the level of our nervous system to be able to heal from these traumas that are really held on in a cellular level. And the consequence of not doing so, I mean, ultimately, research is proving more and more that a lot of chronic health and sometimes fatal health outcomes can be tracked back to stress in the nervous system. I've had parents who have said their kids, have a ADHD diagnosis, and all of a sudden this is like a magic wand for them, and their kids are no longer upset at bedtime, and they're, it's like a complete game changer for them.
So does this help with people who have ADHD, kids and adults?
I think it can help with anyone, but I mean, you might have to be mindful. Like everybody's nervous system is wired differently, right? So This is why at the top of my profile, I have a testing video that shows how you can test before and after you do the drill. And this is the thing that's so fascinating. So that, like, neurosomatics is not a new thing, but neurosomatic intelligence is. Neurosomatic intelligence is the first way of being able to also test, not just subjectively, like, how do you feel now, but actually test in terms of body mechanics to know whether or not a neuro drill was positive for your nervous system or negative or neutral. So when you're doing it with kids, you want to find ways to be able to test them so that they can then give you feedback, because some kids with autism, for example, may not like some of the sensory stimulus. You got to find the things that work for them. And it's not if there's something going on in like the brain chemistry, it's not necessarily going to cure something like autism. I don't even think autism needs to be cured, but again, that's a whole other podcast. I think people with autism are geniuses. But it may help with some of the protective outputs. It may help with some of the overstimulation that's happening. It may help with, them being able to get a restful sleep with a calm, regulated nervous system. It may help with their interest in eating, because all of these different things that happen, like people with autism have very heightened sensory awareness. Their nervous systems are often picking up on much more than a neurotypical person. And that's part of the reason why they have, different outputs than a neurotypical person that might look problematic, but actually when you can address it at the level of the nervous system, you can and just meet them where they are and give them the healing that they need. It can make a huge difference in how they're able to cope inside of their very special body.
Right. So I want to talk about some practical ways. So can you give me just little examples of drills that you would do? So let's take, because you mentioned a colic baby earlier. So let's take a parent who has a colic newborn. What are some drills that they can do on the little one to kind of alleviate and relieve the cramps in?
The number one thing I would say with a young baby, their primary way of regulating their nervous system is co-regulating to their primary caregiver.
So that's maybe skin on skin.
But you're going to want to do the neurosomatic drills on yourself, because if you're dysregulated, then they're your skin on skin, sure. But if you're anxious, stressed, they're still just co-regulating to your stress. So they're like, yep, you're confirming to me there's something to be stressed about, right? Like doing the drills on yourself, number one, and practicing them consistently. Number one is going to reduce the overall threat in your nervous system so that your baby has a calm, confident parent to co-regulate to. But if you want to do things directly with a baby, obviously there's some limitations, like babies can't follow instructions and, do some of the ones that you could do when they're a bit older. But I would probably start with proprioceptive stimulation. We talk about loving touch, and just, these are your hands, and just touching their little hands. You can use a little blanket or a soft cloth, or you can use your own hands, or you can experiment with different textures. You could even try a warm, something that's been heated up to be warm, like a warm washcloth, or those little magic bags you can put in the microwave to make warm. Or you can try even with cold. Some people really like the sensation of cold, like a little ice cube, to see if they like that on their feet, or their hands. You can just, these are your legs. These are your legs. Look at your legs. I see your legs. Wow, there's your arms.
Yeah.
I see your arms. And then even just you taking a deep breath, like, again, they're learning to mirror us. This is why when babies start to smile, like they're reflecting back to us what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So just like, you can smile at your baby and they might smile back. Like, first of all, that's going to be a little boost for them as well. But, as they get a bit older, you can also like, or start yawning. Pretend, like, you can start pretending to yawn, but you know how yawns are contagious. Like, a yawn is a somatic release. And so and then even just validating that it's okay for them to have feelings like, oh, good for you. You're sad right now. I hear you. You're sad. Yes. It's okay to be sad.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. You're really sad. Like, I think we can all relate. Like, sometimes you do just need to feel seen and heard.
And validated. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're a baby and you're upset about something and everyone's like, it's okay. It's okay. And it's like, it's not okay. Like, I am not okay right now. I want to go back into the womb. Like, I don't like this.
It's nice up there.
Yeah. So I think that there's lots of different ways that we can work with babies, even though, obviously they're not able to do some of the stuff.
Mm-hmm. What are some drills that parents can do to regulate themselves if they're feeling angry or anxious or just generally just dysregulated? What are some drills that they can do?
Yeah. So anger is a great one to talk about. Because you can just feel it. You can feel it. It's almost like a volcano about to erupt, right? And sometimes this is why we snap, is because it's like a pressure cooker and we've been triggered. And we're like, okay, no, they're just being kids. Oh, look, they threw their dinner all over the floor again. Okay. Yeah, I just washed that, but okay, and oh, no, okay, now we're going to do this. All right. And then all of a sudden one thing happens and it's like, right. It's just the lid blows off, right? And so we need to move that energy out of our body, right. and acknowledge it. First of all, acknowledge it, like, okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Self-awareness, number one. You got to be aware, like, oh, I'm dysregulated right now. My kids know that term now, and they'll be like, Mommy, cute. Mommy, you're dysregulated. You need to go do some neurosomatic drills. I'm like, you're correct. How about you go to bed and then I can do that?
I hate that you're correct. Shut up.
Yeah. So like shaking your body and, shaking your hands like this and just like, oh, and if you feel weird doing that, whatever, put on a song and make it a kitchen dance party. Okay, you guys, we're having a kitchen dance party now. Yeah, whatever. Jump around, stomp your feet. Instead of getting mad and storming, like kids do this when they're mad, they'll get mad and like stomp up all the stairs.
Right.
Make it into a fun thing and be like, we're going to stomp. Ready? Let's pretend we're elephants. Rah, 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 rah. And you can make it so it's a non-threatening thing to your kids, but it's still allowing your body to move that energy. Obviously, like taking a deep breath can help. But for me, honestly, that's not necessarily going to diffuse my anger. Another really interesting one that feels a little weird to do, I'm not going to lie, but I have a video on this as well, but it's called the chicken dance.
Okay.
And you literally...
That one?
Well, yes. We don't do this part with the hands, but you do the wing flapping. And when have your elbows up like this and you're sort of flapping your wings towards your chest, you're actually stimulating your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve isn't just in the back of your brainstem, it actually goes all the way down to your hips. And so you're stimulating your vagus nerve, and then you're stomping your feet at the same time, and then forceful inhales and exhales, like again, like it feels a little bit like you wouldn't probably want to do that right in the middle of your office meeting.
Maybe close the door, go stand in a bathroom cubicle.
But it can actually be really hilarious with kids, and then everyone starts laughing, and sure enough, now you're not mad anymore.
Right. What you were saying just triggered this beautiful TikTok I saw. I wish I could remember who the creator was because I would go back and find it. But she was saying that kids are born with built-in regulation systems, right? So when they scream or when they stomp or when they, I mean, even like when they mad at you and they stick their tongue out, like that's the body trying to regulate itself. It's like that energy is coming out. And she was saying exactly what you're saying now. When you're angry and when you dysregulated, like you need to do those things, like exactly as a child would throw yourself on the floor and, get your wiggles out and, do all of that. She says, because that's how the energy comes out. And she was like, the end of the video, she goes, you have to be weird to heal. And that was so powerful to me. You can't
Yes.
heal without feeling the feels, and you can't heal without not being proper. Do you know what I mean? Like there has to be a weirdness, and I got that in air quotes. There has to be a kind of weirdness to get your system to regulate. I'm gonna hope that I can track that video back to me, but that was a really good one.
Yeah, see if you can find it, because I was like, when you were first describing them, like, are you sure it's not my video? Because I have 3 videos like that on my profile.
You know what? It could be you, but then again, there's so many TikToks. Like I said, once
Yep.
TikTok gets me in, it's hard to get me out again. So
It definitely wasn't my video, because I didn't say that part at the end about you need to be weird to heal. But my videos are all like, these are natural things kids do to regulate their nervous system that can be annoying or triggering for adults.
So what we as adults do, we see that as a threat and we see that as a trigger, and then we stop the child from regulating themselves, and then we have adults who can't deal with emotions.
Yes, and you got to ask yourself, why are the adults triggered by this? Because when they were children and they were behaving that way, they were not allowed, and it became unsafe for them. So then on a subconscious level, when they see their kid do it, that's not a safe behavior.
Was done to us.
Yes.
Conversations like this just make me come alive, I swear.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. So basically, it's you've got to be weird to heal yourself and in turn help your children heal themselves. It's okay. Like when one of my clients told me that they are having a problem with their child hitting other children. And I said, the hitting in itself is not wrong. The hitting other children, yes, but your child is feeling an emotion and the energy needs to be expelled. So what we're not going to do is say no hitting or stop hitting or you're not allowed to hit. We're going to show them instead what they can hit, what is safe to hit. So here's a pillow. Punch the hell out of this pillow. Right? Yep. Get that energy out, but don't stop the child from performing it. Like a jumping child, we're not going to stop the jumping. We're going to show them instead where they can jump, because they are regulating. They need to get that energy out. Like that's what children do.
Totally. Yes, pool noodles are fun for hitting too. Just take the big long pool noodle.
Right, because that we're not hurting anybody, so we're keeping safe.
Exactly.
So there's a boundary, but the action can still be done.
Yes, you can just smack it on a bed or like go outside and like hit the pool noodle on the grass or the fence or whatever.
Right.
Like blowing bubbles is a good one with kids too. They always, enjoy blowing bubbles, and then that gets them like long exhales.
Amazing. Before we wrap it up, can you tell our listeners where they can reach you, how they can reach you, what your TikTok handle is, or if you're on Instagram and all of that? And then like, if there are people who actually want to consult with you, do you do online work, or can you give us all the information? Because I think you are amazing and I think you should be my friend.
Thank you. Yes, let's be friends. Well, it's already done. We're already friends now. Done. So yes, my handle on TikTok and Instagram is the same. It's cjsmith.ca. Mm-hmm. So you can find me there, cjsmith.ca. And I do take one-to-one sessions, and I also have courses available. I'm actually working on one right now that I'm super excited about. That's all going to be play-based nervous system regulation, because the feedback that I've had from people is like, they're like, well, I know you're showing this like to help with kids, but as an adult, it's actually way more fun for me to do it in play than to like take myself so seriously. But I actually want to do it that way too. Another thing to mention is I've written 2 books, which again, are an excellent resource for anyone. I have one for adults or teens even, and one for kids. So they're called Radical Reflection and they're available on Amazon globally. The one for adults
amazing.
is called Radical Reflection Creative Mindset Journal. And it's really cool because it's nervous system regulation and mindset together. But instead of just, a lot of the mindset work is like journal your goals, talk about the habits you want to change, and you're writing, and that can be vulnerable because we don't always have the language to describe all of these things, nor do we necessarily feel safe to write it down and have someone else find our journal down the road.
I had that experience where my privacy was violated, and I'm terrified to journal my feelings because of it.
Yeah, a lot of people are. So we made it so that you're expressing yourself with creativity. So you're actually, it's like a coloring book, but it's got like way more to it than a coloring book because there's these long sort of like prompts for each page. So you're thinking and you're taking that energy and you're expressing it onto the page. So you're creating something, but you're also regulating your nervous system while you're doing it because it's a somatic experience and you're calm and you're coloring and it becomes sort of meditative, for the people that are like, I know I should meditate, but I just can't sit still and meditate. Yeah, of course you can. If you're dysregulated, it's very challenging. If you have something like a neurodiversity or ADHD too, also very challenging to tell your body to sit down and like meditate in these traditional ways. How can we make this more accessible? Instead of just saying, I can't do this, how can I'm neurodiverse. Like I also can relate to that because I couldn't do it. So I was like, I want something that would be fun and engaging for someone like me. That likes to create, wants to see bright colors. And again, color therapy is also a whole other thing. It's changing the frequency of the light going into your eyes. So you can color something all in red if you're feeling some kind of way versus coloring it in different shades of blue or green or pink. So this is another tool that we have. Radical Reflection Kids and Radical Reflection Creative Mindset Journal are two more resources where people can, tap into my work. And then this course, so I'm working alongside a certified breathwork practitioner, and we're coming up with all these really fun ways to be able to integrate this for busy parents and for kids who have short attention spans and need it to be fun and engaging. Like we're doing a whole breathwork and neurosomatic routine based on the book, The Paper Bag Princess from Robert Munsch. And we're doing like different stuff. Like, we have like this colorful windmill. And so, getting kids to use different tools and imagine themselves on an undersea adventure and creating stories where their characters are going through things and the characters are doing these different nervous system regulation along the way. So yeah, there's lots of different ways. Just reach out to me. If you're more of an email person, it's hello@cjsmith.ca. My website, cjsmith.ca. I try and keep it very simple. cjsmith.ca is kind of how you can find me everywhere.
Awesome. CJ, thank you so much for joining me. I think that this was my favorite podcast recorded to date. Truly.
Wow, what an honor.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this topic. I want in.
Amazing. Well,
I want in.
Well, you're in, Taryn. Let's do this. I'd be happy to teach you everything I know.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Parent Thing. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, feedback, or content suggestions, please email us at Taryn@theparentthing.com. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and give my